You never know as much at the beginning of starting a podcast as you do later on, obviously. And today I want to share 3 things I wish I knew from the beginning that you can know right now. Hi, I'm Steph from Sane and Simple Podcasting, and my goal is to help you get your voice out there, to get you connected to the people you want to talk to about the things you are super passionate about in a sane and simple fashion, not super fancy, not super hectic, but in a way that peace of mind is part of your workflow. All right, so let's do this. The first thing that I wish I knew at the beginning of podcasting was that the ratio of how much marketing and promotions you need to do with the production side of things isn't exactly what it seems. Let me explain. I heard a lot of people saying you should do 80% marketing and 20% podcast creation. And my soul just shriveled up and I said, "No, what are you talking about? I love creating. That's the part I want to spend the most time on." And both of us were actually wrong. I was wrong because you do have to promote your podcast. You do have to share your podcast. And I'm going to use those terms interchangeably because they're they're pretty close to being the same. But marketing and promotions is such a gigantic umbrella. What I was actually doing when I was cringing over the thought of promoting my podcast 80% of the time versus 5 or 10% of the time is I thought they meant social media, newsletters, like promotional events, like specifically overtly going, listen to this episode, and that kind of shouty sharing stuff, which I'm not a huge fan of and I've never really been, but sometimes it's necessary and a lot of times it's not. But I thought they meant I had to do more of that, like 80% of the time. And I was like, if that's true, I'm out. I don't need that audience. But it's not true because you can grow your audience organically. Organic marketing is actually a thing. And what I was doing that I didn't realize it at the time was I was in a bunch of podcast creation groups on Facebook, and I participated in some conferences like the International Podcast Day conference that used to exist. And I went to a lot of workshops and things and talked to other podcasters. And podcasters are generally listeners as well. So I was gaining momentum with my audience, with people who were also creators, and they were probably sharing it with the people that they knew as well. And then when I posted on social media, there was more of a to my very limited posting on social media because those people would also we'd support each other in sharing our podcast with our audiences. Way back in the day in 2017 and 2018, it was a very vibrant community over on what used to be Twitter, what used to be a lovely podcasting space. But it wasn't just Twitter. It was, which I know is now called X, but I don't care because it's no longer a fun podcasting space for me. But the conferences and that was my grieving that just happened right there because I still have not found anything to fully take over that space. But let's move on. The conferences, the Facebook groups, all of those things, those places that I was sharing and talking about podcasting online was actually a form of promotions, marketing, sharing, whatever you want to call it. So when you think about how do I divide up my time between making the podcast and sharing the podcast with people? When you think about that ratio, think about the ways that feel comfortable for you. Me sharing my podcast organically by talking to people and being in groups and geeking out about the process itself, that's where my comfort zone is the vast majority of the time, even now 8 years later. And I do the same for some of my clients as well, is assuming that they're comfortable with me sharing behind the scenes stuff. Because again, that's interesting to me, and I can only promote podcasts in a way that I find interesting. So what you need to do is find out what way promotions and sharing your podcast is comfortable for you and do that a lot of the time. I don't know about 80-20, where like you're doing promotions 80% of the time and you're creating 20%. I'd say if you're doing 50-50, then I think you're doing really well, especially if where you're sharing your podcast and however you like to share that is in a space that people are podcast listeners or they're really interested in your topic, which is probably even more important than them being podcast listeners yet, then I think you're in really, really good shape. So, what I wish I knew, the first thing I wish I knew when I started podcasting is that marketing isn't always just overt marketing. Organic marketing, just talking to people about the project, sharing things that you're passionate about connected to the podcast, those are things that could really help your audience grow without being pushy at all. I love that. I wish I knew that because I had serious, I should be promoting more guilt for a very long time. And I put that down after probably a year or two. But it was intense because I went through that phase where I wasn't sharing it at all, and then I wanted to share it with everywhere, but I didn't know how. And then I realized I actually was. So don't torture yourself with promotions guilt. Promote in ways that you find comfortable and even it out a little bit with the creation and the promotion side and see how it works. Do something, experiment, track it and see how your downloads are doing, how your engagement is doing depending on your metric of what is a successful podcast for you and your goals. And then adjust what you're doing. Experiment and look at the results. Experiment, look at the results. And there you go. That's number 1. Number 2, I love talking about this so much. When you edit podcasts, when I edited my podcast, I I made so many mistakes at the beginning. Like, okay, first, at the beginning, I didn't use a dynamic microphone that focused on what was close to it, my voice. I used really bad, cheap condenser microphones that picked up everything in the room, if they even picked up that. I kid you not, my first few episodes when I was interviewing people, I was clueless. I had a little lav mic hooked onto my phone that was on a stand similar to this. This is my phone. Isn't that a great case? That's one of the pictures I took. Anyway, so I had it like this. I had the lav mic here, and I had it on a table between me and the person I was interviewing. Oh, yeah. Those are still up on Geopat's podcast. I've cleaned them up a little bit sound wise, but some of them you can still hear how awful it was. And we were in coffee shops for some of those. All the mistakes. But I had a really good time. And I think that the people I was interviewing also had a really good time. And that was way more important to me than perfection. However, what I did in the editing part, I could have been a little more delicate on. And I learned this when a guest actually said to me, "Hey, are you actually taking out every single space where we're not talking?" And I was like, Yeah. I mean, listeners only have our voices. They need to hear our voices." And he's like, "Yeah, but that sounds really unnatural. So you're going to distract them." And he explained it to me in the super nicest way. And he's like, "Maybe try not doing that and see how it sounds to you." And that forever changed how I edit audio. Now, I mean, I always like edited a bit and then went back and listened to how it sounded. Did I? No. You know what? Now that I think about it, I don't think I even did that. But ever since then, I'll edit a bit. I might take out a little bit of a space depending on what's happening emotionally and vocally. And I'll go back and I'll listen to make sure that the rhythm and the emotionality and just everything's intact and it doesn't sound like I've taken anything out. You really want to keep the emotions and the momentum of the conversation or of just the one speaker speaking going throughout the whole episode. If you can hear the edit, a lot of people say if you can hear the edit, you've probably over edited. So you really want it to sound natural. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, so you will see my jump shots and you'll know when I edited something out. But if you close your eyes, hopefully you wouldn't necessarily hear the edits that I was doing. And that's what I was aiming for with my audio podcast 8 years ago. And I still do, actually. I don't edit video like that as much as audio, but that's a whole other bag of bones. So keeping that natural pace, keeping that, like when there's a longer pause, but there's an emotional moment, do not delete that. Don't delete every single if that's someone's natural speech pattern. Keep some of them in, especially when they're attached to other words. I've got other videos on this. I'll link them down in the video notes for you. I love talking about podcast editing. I love talking about podcast editing, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. Go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Yeah, it's infinitely fascinating how you can make voices sound better without taking away from the person sounding like who they are and how they naturally already sound. Also, I'll take this opportunity to say if you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. And by all means, subscribe and hit the notification button so you know when new videos come out. I vacillate between tutorials on how to do things in podcasting, including YouTube for podcasting, Substack, which I need to do more of, and editing, promotions, all kinds of things, optimizing your podcast so people can find you when they search, lots and lots and lots of different things. You can see our playlists. And I'd really love you to take advantage of this free content to get more ears on your podcast. Okay, number three. I wish I had stayed in my lane a little more. I did get a little comparison heavy, especially the first, not when I was still being quiet about my podcast, but when I started to share it. I did have a few jealousy moments that I'm not proud of. I did have a few comparison moments that really damaged my momentum a little bit. I mean, I was kind of a content maniac because I loved what I was doing and I loved the people that I was able to connect with and interview and those kinds of things. And I was just like, I was on fire because I didn't have a creative outlet for so many years while I was teaching. And once I found podcasting and wasn't teaching, it was this perfect combination of it's my time to create. And all this stuff just kept coming out of me. And I was like, that's fantastic. This is amazing. But I also, because I was putting so much time and effort and energy and so much of myself into my podcast, I was a little annoyed that other people were getting more attention, different attention. They were getting highlighted for this and that and the other thing. And the comparison thing is the quickest way to demotivate yourself. And this is why I'm so loud about people defining their goals, even if they change, defining your podcast goals, figuring out how to track them, and constantly coming back to those. Don't compare your downloads to other people's. Don't compare your podcast goals to other people's, your engagement level. Don't compare the monetization if you're doing that route. Don't compare it to other people. Especially don't compare it to celebrity podcasts. Now there's a ton of those out there. Don't compare to network podcasts because you probably don't have a giant team. So it's unfair to compare your independent podcast with someone with a podcast that has an entire team to work on episodes. So try not to compare yourself to other people. The mindset that I developed thanks to the groups I was in was more of collaboration, less of comparison. What I ended up doing was a lot of collaborations with other podcasters where we would do episode swaps, we would interview each other, we would do live events together. It was a really fun time to be in podcasting, I'm not going to lie. You can still do a lot of those things now. And doing those things really reinstilled in me, we're all trying to reach our specific people in the content areas that we're in. And these are amazing people. I taught not little people, I taught adults language and writing for almost 20 years overseas. And those teacher rooms where we were like geeking out about people's language issues, because it was teaching second language learners communication skills in English. And when we geeked out about language and teaching methods and share different activities and things like that, once I stopped teaching, I missed that camaraderie and I found it almost instantly in podcasting. And I found that podcasters, independent podcasters especially, were also often lifelong learners, deep divers. They were really quirky, interesting, sharing heavy, community-driven people. Those are my people. That's probably you. If that's true, you're my people too. So, okay. So what I'm saying is find your people in podcasting, do collaborations with them if you have the time to do them, which I hope you do, because connections is one of the biggest things that can come out of podcasting in a really beautiful way. So find your people, do your collaborations. It is part of number one, which is the marketing side of all of this that we were talking about a few minutes ago. And stop the comparisons. Make your goals, set your metrics, how you're going to measure them, and do your collaborations and move the heck on from any comparisons. When people say, "Oh my gosh, I reached 1 million downloads today." Stay in your lane. Don't compare yourself to that person. They have very different circumstances, and there's no point in doing that. What you're there for can be very different, and almost always is very different than what they're doing there, and they could have been working on it for ages and ages. Or they could have gotten really lucky, or they could have, there's a number of different reasons. There's so many ways you can compare yourself to others in podcasting, and I beg of you, don't. I did it, and it was terrible. And when I let it go, it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. So, to recap, the 3 things I wish I knew when I started podcasting: organic sharing of your podcast counts as marketing. So try to do like a 50-50 split of creating your podcast 50% of the time and then sharing it in organic or more formal ways, whatever's comfortable for you, that other 50% of the time. Natural editing. Don't edit everything out. It doesn't sound natural. Listen for the flow of the conversation more than trying to get out every imperfection, especially with newer AI tools that'll just automatically delete all of that. Have a little more control over that than deleting every X, Y, or Z that you're trying to get out of there. And third of all, don't compare yourself to others and their podcasts. It's just a slippery slope to demotivation, and we need your voice. We want you to continue on doing podcasting for as long as you want and need to. And when you're demotivated, that doesn't happen. So these are the 3 things I wish I knew 8 years ago. No regrets. I needed to go through what I need to go through, and I certainly don't want to stop you on your journey. But if I can make it a little bit lighter for you emotionally, then I hope this video served that purpose. Sane and simple podcasting. Yeah, that's where I sit at this point in my podcasting journey. Whether I'm doing it for clients or for myself, I just life first, podcasting second. And part of that life first mentality is making sure that your podcast fits into the rest of your life in a way that doesn't that adds to it, Let me know what you think in the comments below. And by all means, drop your podcast, whether it's a YouTube or an audio only one. I'd love to hear what you're up to. And yeah, see you next time. Bye.